Our guest speaker today is, as you're already aware, His Excellency Raed Charafeddine, and His Excellency is possibly the most qualified person in the world to talk about the economic outlook in the Middle East and in Lebanon. With over 20 years of banking experience in Lebanon and the Gulf, he is currently the first Vice Governor of Banque de Liban, the Central Bank of Lebanon, with bachelor's and master's academic qualifications and a CV that includes role in the International Monetary Fund, the Arab Monetary Bank Fund, and more. His Excellency is also a lifelong activist in the areas of social justice, women's empowerment, interfaith dialogue, and institutional, human, and economic development. He sits as consultant and advisor on boards that range from the Selection Committee for the Diplomatic Corps to the Lebanese Excellence Awards, and so much more. To introduce him more fully, I'm proud to introduce my friend and your friend, the President of the ALCCI, Mr. Fadi Zouki, OAM. Fadi.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, friends, family, members of the Board of the Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you very much for attending today. It means a lot to me. This is really, today's talk is about your lives, about the people who live in Lebanon's future, and about, obviously, it's also impact indirectly even the Western economies. So we are very, very privileged to have His Excellency with us to come through 7 seas, to come to Australia, to be among you, to share all the knowledge and the experience that Lebanon and the neighbors have been facing, all these challenges they faced throughout, the years that we've known Lebanon go through the turbulence they went through. More importantly, we want to also let them know how lucky we are in this country that has actually treated us as Australians, not as immigrants, and gave us, we achieved all our dreams, our goals, and gave us the stability, the economic growth we all aspired for. So Australia also, we owe it big time. So we wanted him to go from here to share this beautiful country's, outlook, the fair go we experienced here, the support we had as Australian Lebanese. So I don't want to talk too much. As I said, I want to welcome him to the stage to say a few words of wisdom that he's experienced over the years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fadi, for the invitation. Tony, for the introduction. Nice introduction. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the topic of my talk today is Diasporic economic strides amid regional turbulent tides. Thank you for availing me this opportunity to address such a distinguished audience, Fadi, on such a special occasion that connects me to people having richly diversified origins and backgrounds, yet unified links to a region that is dear to our hearts and pivotal to human civilization since the dawn of history, that's to say the Arab world and Lebanon at its core. I would also like to acknowledge the exceptional role of the Australia-Lebanon Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Victoria, headed by my dear friend, Mr. Fadi Zouki, OAM, in capitalizing on the Lebanese diaspora capabilities for the collective benefit of Australia and Lebanon. It is known that the Lebanese migration history to Australia has started around 1880, long before the independence of both countries, occurring through 3 successive waves, and hence weaving a strong fabric that is beautifully embroidered with integrity, patriotism, and willpower. As you all know, the Arab Spring that many has rejoiced a few years ago, unfortunately didn't quite blossom the roses of prosperity and peace that we all desire for our homeland. Few of the achievements in some regions were offset by massive detriments in many others. Hence, this Arab transition still strides in its autumn phase, which is characterized by conflicts, civil wars, macroeconomic impairments, and socioeconomic depletion. The cyclical crisis cliffs, which have been occasionally threatening global financial and economic stability, are often materializing into real crises, causing immense losses and misfortunes. The recent manifestations of which are the 2008 financial crisis and its repercussions. From the Arab perspective, the backdrop of a slowing global economy and lower commodity prices had tainted the Arab macroeconomic scene with a stagnating economic growth. According to the World Bank, overall Arab GDP growth has recorded less than 3% for the third year running. Lower oil prices, conflicts, and the global economic slowdown make short-term prospects of recovery unlikely. Investment and financing needs in the Arab region are high, and its shortage of foreign capital has made a bad situation even worse. An overall fiscal surplus of about 2% of GDP in 2013 is expected to turn into a deficit of 9.2% of Arab GDP as a whole. By the same token, the Arab external account surplus of the past years is expected to turn into a deficit of about 2.6% of GDP. Fiscal positions in oil exporters, particularly in the Gulf Cooperation Council states, are worsening. A surplus of about 5.4% of GDP in 2013 is expected to turn into a deficit of about 9.8% of GDP, reflected as $136 billion in 2015. As for the developing oil exporters such as Syria, Iraq, and Libya, the majority of these witnessed a decline of about 40% or more in their outputs, with significant damage to the oil sectors and a fall in oil production, leading to the mountain of fiscal deficits. While benefiting from lower oil prices, Arab oil importers are being exhausted by terrorist attacks, spillovers from neighboring wars, slow growth in the Eurozone, and political uncertainty. Egypt and Morocco seem to be an exception, experiencing little stronger economic growth in 2015. On the socio-economic level, the total number of people displaced from Yemen, Syria, Libya, and Iraq is estimated at 15 million, many of them fleeing to neighboring countries such as Lebanon and Jordan. Moreover, the Arab world, which has the fastest growth of employment, still has the second highest level of unemployment in the world, which is 9.7%. The unemployment crisis touches youth and women mostly at an average unemployment rate for youth of 22%, and again, this is among the highest rates in the world, and 28% for young females. Limited financial inclusion that reaches 18%, weakness of safety net programs, and really that prevail in the Arab, and the prevalence of the Arab informal economy constitute real challenge for the Arab world. From the Lebanese perspective, Lebanon has been intensively witnessing the repercussions of the Arab transitional era at the macroeconomic, socioeconomic, and political levels. With the rash of the Syrian war by its side and having 1.5 million Syrians displaced on its soil, Lebanon's macroeconomic status has been under immense stress, which added to the challenge that the Lebanese economy has initially borne. On the macroeconomic level, despite a relatively rapid growth in GDP, which averaged at 8% between 2008 and 2010, GDP growth rate recorded less than 1%, and inflation rate was close to zero in 2015. Nevertheless, thanks to the achievements of the monetary front, 50% of the growth has been spurred by Banque de Liban, which is the central bank of Lebanon. The Banque de Liban's stimulus packages since 2013, and confidence in the economy and in the Lebanese lira remains strong. with Banque de Liban's foreign assets exceeding $37 billion and gold valued at around $10 billion as of January 2016, and deposit and loan dollarization persisting on a continued downward trend, reaching 64% and 74% respectively at year end. Public debt has mounted to $70 billion, equivalent to about 145% of the GDP, though Lebanon has proved to absorb the public debt pressure due to the substantial size of its money supply, with the continuation of the central bank's intervention in the bonds market to manage liquidity without disturbing market mechanisms. The banking sector generally has proven its worth despite the pressing challenges that took some toll on its advancement. However, its performance remains healthy and enduring. Total banking activity remains healthy. It grew by about 6%, with the total assets of our banks exceeding $185 billion. And to put it into context, this is how much assets we have versus an economy of $50 billion. And at the same time, our deposits ran as high as almost $160 billion. $160 billion of deposits versus an economy of only $50 billion at the end of 2015. In parallel, lending activity registered 6.4% growth during 2015, with the total credit to the private sector exceeding $55 billion in December 2015, and financial inclusion amounting to 47%, one of the highest in the Arab region. Furthermore, the Lebanese banking sector's high levels of liquidity enabled commercial banks to finance the government and private sector needs while maintaining a stable interest rate structure. In terms of capitalization, Lebanese banks have reached BDL's 12% capital adequacy ratio in 2015, exceeding the requirement of Basel III. Moreover, the Central Bank of Lebanon has been strict in enforcing issues regarding consumer protection, debt restructuring, trans-border cash movements, tax evasion, anti-money laundering, and combating terrorism, with the aim of combating the financing of terrorism, with the aim of promoting financial stability and sustainable growth. The labor market in Lebanon is characterized by high unemployment rate, reaching 11%. That was in 2010. And unfortunately, with the intense competition for jobs by the displaced Syrians, that raised unemployment and informal business activities by an extra 10 percentage points. In light of these traumatic dilemmas and structural impediments, the Arab region in general needs an innovative strategy and a bold agenda for developing a robust transition. Without creating employment growth and productivity development, Arab economies don't have inherently the stable structural features of inclusive economies. Starting points may vary across countries, but there are a number of common areas for reform that include prioritizing economic opportunities for youth and women, modernizing public sectors, stimulating the private sector, raising social confidence, shifting from rentier underdevelopment to productive development, engaging in regional and global integration, utilizing innovative fiscal policy, adopting holistic development that surpasses economic growth, initiating sovereign governance that spurs economic equity, embracing innovation as a knowledge-based transition, and capitalizing on the diaspora transitional communities as agents of development. For the remainder of my short talk today, I will focus on the last component, which is capitalizing on diaspora transitional communities as agents of development. For many countries, including small and resource-constrained ones, conditional foreign aid and seasonal remittance transfers do not provide adequate financing for developmental projects. Neither is issuing conventional bonds at shorter maturities and higher yields are considered appealing. On the other hand, low-cost financing opportunities offered by a diaspora bond, along with access to international capital markets that is linked to it, may actually be a viable option, especially for those with large potential worldwide diaspora stock active in homeland affairs, like Lebanon. In this context, the implementation of diaspora regulatory mechanisms and migration development banks can ensure the just and fair regulation of the temporary labor migration process. The case of the Indian IT service industry embodies the concept of offshore outsourcing and offshore subsidiaries, whereby the role that members of transnational communities play as agents of development in their home countries reduces the problems of institutional distance, thus transforming the crisis of brain drain into a development catalyst. Based on the aforementioned, the Lebanese diaspora in Australia constitutes a developmental model that can be capitalized upon by a bridge between Lebanon, the Arab world in general, and the Australian continent, thus benefiting from both regions as sources of consumption markets and production. This is necessarily true due to the current Australian impressive economic expansion, which dates back to 1991, thus promising to break the record of the longest expansion since World War II. It is also valid due to the potential synergy that can be built between the Australian booming advanced services sector, mounting to around 60% of GDP and generating services worth around $970 billion in 2014-2015, according to the Australian Industry Report of 2015, published by the Department of Industry, Innovation and Science. Exploring the Australian service sector further, the enabling services are a vital part of this sector and the economy. Intermediary business services that constitute a key requirement for businesses to get their products to market generate 29% of GDP. These include professional and support services, information and telecommunications technology, the digital economy, trade, transport and logistics, and utilities services. In parallel, the Central Bank of Lebanon has created a financial engineering model for capitalizing innovation by enabling banks to participate for the first time in equity financing of startup companies, incubators, accelerators, and venture capitals involved in innovation, aiming at nurturing these vital economic agents. Hence, more than $600 billion have been placed to boost the knowledge economy and the creation of new institutions that enrich the economy and provide employment opportunities. In this context, for the purpose of actualizing their agency developmental roles, Lebanese diaspora are called upon to capitalize on this prominent initiative and establish bridgeheads institutions in Lebanon and generate a double-headed comparative advantage for themselves in the Australian and East Asian market and for the Australian associates in the Lebanese and grander Arab markets. Other potential areas of benefit for the diaspora in Lebanon include the lurking strategic petroleum and gas industry, the diaspora-specific Lebanese banking services, and the distinguished Lebanese academic services that provided by the high-quality universities, certainly in addition to the banking sector. In conclusion, since the ancient Phoenician merchants sailed the Mediterranean, Lebanese people have constantly had wanderlust, setting up cities such as Carthage, which is currently definitely in Tunisia, as you well know. It was founded on the 9th century BC, and Cadiz, which is currently in the southern part of Spain, and this was founded in 1104 BC. Hence, flexibility, networking, resilience, and the win-win approach are inherent Lebanese traits. They have been the keys to their success. It is well said that building a prosperous future for Lebanon relies on 3 strategic sectors: oil and gas, banking and finance, and the knowledge economy. However, it is best said that the 4th strategic sector yet aspired to capitalize on all other strategic sectors is you, the Lebanese messengers, expatriates. With your entrepreneurial spirit and sense of achievement, we count on you to be agents of development and renaissance for Lebanon, thus transforming the crisis of brain drain into a haven of development. And always remember, you are rooted in Lebanon, which is more than a country. You are rooted in a mission, as per His Holiness the late Pope John Paul II. Dear missionaries, thank you very much, and God bless you.